Hello fellow unicorns, welcome to another video. My name is Mina and I am a professional manga teacher. Today we will learn how to draw an advanced manga eye. I wanted to show you two different ways of drawing manga eyes, and if you want to see my previous video on manga eyes, please click on the link I will be providing down below in the description and in the end of this video, so you can check out my tutorial section and find my original the regular eye drawing tutorial with 8 different types of eyes you can try out. But today I will be showing you two different ways of drawing an advanced manga eye, complete with shading and shaping the eye, and how to represent an innocent character and a more serious character. This is applicable to both male and female characters, so let's begin. Okay, so first of all, I wanted to show you guys the trick behind drawing the innocent and more elaborate eye for your whimsical positive characters. The shape of the whimsical and innocent eye is based on the circular shape of the iris. And you can add, as we established in the first tutorial, we will be adding the upper lash line and the lower lash line. And there is so many different ways of shaping these lash lines, but it's all up to you, I guess. The most basic thing is to vary in the thicknesses of the upper lash line. So if the nose is on this side of the eye, you should definitely start your upper lash line thinner and make it thicker to the outside, facing the ears. And as for these type of eyes, there's also a little trick I wanted to show you guys. When you put some small and scarcely placed eyelashes, and maybe even have a double start, like a lash line or a pointy shape right here. The more tiny shapes and more loose lash lines you add, the better the overall effect will be. We will leave this like this for starters because we won't be doing all of this in pencil. We will be doing some inking and shaping and highlighting and of course coloring at the end of the video. So I will be just setting up the bases of this eye and then proceed to the more detailed part. Okay, so usually the iris in anime and manga is shaped for characters from an egg shape or an elliptical shape, or maybe some sort of a circle, but usually it's an elongated circle, so we should definitely follow this shape. Next up, we have the lower lash line. Lower lash line for a more advanced effect should be doubled up and should be carefully placed. First of all, we have the basic lash line, then we can add a thinner lash line right parallel to the original one and start adding some simple small loose lashes. It's all up to you how you think your character should look like. This is all for a more elaborate art style, for a more shoujo type of art style, like for example Black Butler anime or something like that, or manga. If you look closer, the artists that do Black Butler manga, they make sure that all of their characters' eyes is filled with different tiny lashes, and even the lashes can sometimes have their own shading shown in the artwork. Even some of the lashes can be enriched by adding white lines over it, and I will show you all of these techniques. Okay, so what we are left with is the inside of the iris. There's a lot of different ways you can approach by adding highlights or light bubbles, as I like to call them, like a bigger one and diagonally placed smaller one, or even a third one. You can also add many more if you want, and of course you can shape the inner pupil any way you like. You can make it a color pupil, you can make it pupil of a very strange shape. But what I always recommend is to make the outer iris line very thick. So all of this is just basic stuff. There's nothing special to it. There's nothing advanced to it yet, until we approach the topic of placing the line art and placing the inking lines. So, and what we lack here is a very thin but very important line above the upper lash line, and also there could be added a Y-shaped line above that little line, and there is a half circle thin line for the eyebrow. The eyebrow itself for female and young characters is usually thin. It can be applied to male characters as well if they have more feminine features. If you have more childlike but masculine character, you should bring the eyebrow a little bit closer to the eye and make it a little bit thicker. But for now, let's start with the inking. For the inking, I'm using my very own favorite brush kind of a pen. It's called Kuretake Futayaku, and it has a black and a gray end, so you can do both the inking and the sketching and the shading with this pen. That's why this is my current favorite pen. And you wouldn't believe how much of a difference the inking process can be, because when you have a good inking tool, or when you get very skilled with applying ink in various forms, you can add so many nice and crisp lines to your artwork and transform your sketch art into something else, something more advanced. So the inking part is definitely the very important part of the advanced techniques. This takes a lot of time to practice and a lot of time to improve and just make sure that your art is evolving. So it's very important to test out what kind of art styles you want to have. This is just one of the styles I personally prefer. This is a style that personally to me is pretty and detailed and is just nice for my eye, but you guys can just pick out any type of art style in manga you would like to follow. So usually, since these eyes are very big and manga panels are always drawn big, you can add some more details to the eye. Even if you're like doing digital artwork and stuff like that, you can add gradients and you can add some tiny white colored bubbles and dots on top of this layer. We will do that later. So what we need is to definitely ink out the highlights first, so we don't accidentally cover them with color or something like that. And now we have the complete liberty to warp and change our initial line work with pencil and just see in how many ways we can make this into something maybe a bit more surreal and artistic. Some artists just use the basic of the basic lines when they do an initial sketch with their pencil, and then disregard it completely when they start inking, because at that moment they realized they wanted to do something else. They saw a line that can potentially make their drawing even more interesting. So you should always give yourself some slack and experiment and see what other things you can implement in your artwork. So never be afraid to just add some other details. Maybe try some textures, maybe try some doubled lines. Maybe when you're finished completely, you can even fix and transform your artwork by adding white lines, combining some technique like gouache. You don't always have to use markers. You can just do regular watercolors. As I mentioned before in a lot of my videos, I will be doing coloring with markers, but you certainly don't need markers because you guys as younger people and beginners have way more time than me as a professional artist to hone up on your skills and wait for your art supplies to dry. Professional artists just need the alcohol-based markers to dry faster than watercolors, so they can do all of their work faster and more efficiently for their customers. And that's the only reason why I'm using Copic markers. You seriously don't need those kinds of expensive things if you're not working for a living from your art. With that said, let's go on our next part. Be careful with the line thickness. Line thickness is something that can be changed, can be improved. You can even modify it with whiteout. Any kind of whiteout will do, like white gel pens or white acrylic, anything you have handy. And of course, if I made any mistakes now, after I erase my pencil, I can just correct it and touch it up with my jelly roll or white paint. That's an important thing to know, that even the biggest professionals, when doing advanced work, they need tools to correct their mistakes, because they too make mistakes and they too change their minds and they too can experiment with their work and constantly evolve. If they change a line, or if they make a mistake, or they just mess up while doing a curve or something like that, it can all be fixed, and I will demonstrate it later in this video. But the most important thing is to know which parts of the eye aesthetic you like seeing the best, and then implementing it in your art. So when I erase this, damn it. Okay, so this is good. This is a usual mistake everybody makes when they are rushing too fast. This is why the professionals use quick drying tools, because we need to make sure that everything is dry before we go on to the next level. And now I will show you how to fix any potential mistake. Because when you make a mistake due to your faulty equipment, or just something didn't dry well, there are ways to fix it. We can use a white jelly roll, or we can use a paintbrush and some white paint and have some thin coats applied to our work. When you're applying a corrective coat of white paint, make sure you're applying it in thin layers. Just wait for a layer to dry before applying the next one. It's like painting nails, or for you guys out there who don't paint their nails, it's just a thing how you paint your nails and correct stuff in paintings. And this can give me an additional boost to my work, because I'm currently smoothing out some of my lines and some of the line edges. Some of the tools we may be using can be insufficient to make those perfect looking lines you can see in manga, and that is why the perfect looking lines are actually created by adding on white paint over black paint. And that's how we think that manga artists are flawless, but actually they're using tricks just like these to fix their own mistakes. After I scan this and import it and clean it up in Photoshop, the mistakes will be completely invisible. If you add the fact that manga artists even shrink their original huge sized art after this process, they are making sure that you as the audience can see 0% of the mistakes. And that's the basic trickery of the manga. Okay, so as we established, the innocent looking eye is the eye that's based on a circular shape. It's huge, it's wide open, it's doll-like. But speaking of dolls, there is also another kind of dolls, for example ball jointed dolls, that always look like they're more of serious looking type of face. They're always dreamy or sleepy or mysterious, and their type of face is not based on a circle. Their type of face is actually based on a shape like an S shape, like a tilde kind of a shape, and the eyes are very narrow. They're just so narrow. They're just like two parallel lines, but just wiggly a bit. And we will do the same thing as we did for the first eye when we plan out the upper lash line and the lower lash line. We'll make sure that the start is like a, I don't know, Instagram star eyeliner, and we start this line with a thinner point, and then we make it wider. We can end it up with another sort of a pointy shape. We can even add some edge to the complete eye just to make it look more crisp. Then we can even connect it with the lower lash line. But what's important to know about manga eyes is that usually this part here is avoided, so we're avoiding to close the shape of the eye. Of course, there is an absolutely important thin line to go under the lower lash line, and then we have the very longer versions of the lower lashes, which makes this eye particularly intricate, and it's having its own very long and very intricate set of lower lash lines. And of course, if we want to, we can make the upper lash lines thicker for the girls. It's important to know about these types of eyes that we should plan out only a half of the iris. It's like the whole iris is hidden some here in this area, but we're planning to draw only the first half. And now, to make the eye even more mysterious looking, we can draw, since it's like a sleepy eye, we can literally draw some lashes over the iris. It's something we won't do in the classical manga eye. This is reserved for those sleepy, hypnotized, mysterious looking characters, and of course the characters that are more serious. Now we should definitely add some highlights planned in, maybe even a sharp looking one here, and hints of a pupil. And when we do this, we should also do the line above the upper lash line and make Y-shape indentation that's right beneath the eyebrow. If you make the eyebrow closer to the eye, starting right here at the base of the eye and just pulling it upwards, you will get that Black Butler looking doll shape. It's applicable to both men and women and female characters because it's showing a little bit more of an adult character than a childish character. So let's get right on to the line art. To make a smooth line, you are allowed to use curvy rulers, for example. If you think that your hands are shaking or that you're just not practiced enough and you keep making squiggly lines instead of smooth lines, that's completely okay. I know a lot of drawing experts that have their arms just shaking constantly. Some of them are born with it, some of them have developed it as kind of a twitch or something, and they have worked their way around it, so no problem is a big problem. For all of you with steady hands, my first suggestion about this is to just stick your hand straight to the table at the wrist and use your hand as a living ruler. That way you won't make mistakes, or at least not catastrophic mistakes. And nobody's perfect, even the professionals can sometimes make mistakes, so don't beat yourself about it. Just try to practice, and practice will make perfect. And of course, we can be very careful. Every manga style that you like that has these types of eyelashes has been developed for years. The artists have developed their artwork for years. It's not something that comes overnight. And you should definitely check out your favorite artists and just peek at the details a little bit more. Check out to see if there are some of your favorite artists that use this type of eyes. My personal trick is to try to make the eye as shut as possible, so even the upper lash line and lower lash line can be a little bit more closed in together. If you make a thicker upper lash line, that's also cool if you're doing a very feminine characters. And now let's work on the iris. As we said, the highlights, or as I call them, light bubbles. I personally think it's a cool nickname for them because when I say light bubbles, that's when you know that I'm working exclusively on the eyes. I'm not talking about highlights in the hair or highlights on, I don't know, piece of armor or something like that. I'm thinking about highlights specifically in manga eyes. As you can see, we have a very thick upper lash line, but we also have a very thin line above that, the similar thickness for the line above that, and then we have the thin lines making a very close lines for the eyebrows. And I made these irises as open shapes, not as black areas, for a purpose. Because when we start coloring, we will see that darker shades of color can make the eye even more detailed looking than just making a full black surface. But if you're doing a manga, which is a black and white medium, you should definitely make the iris, well, the pupil black. Okay, so let's try and erase this, and let's hope everything is dry enough so it doesn't make any smudges. There's also a pattern I will show you about coloring in not just the eyes themselves, but around the eyes. There is a trend going where illustrators are shading beneath the eyes and even leaving the shadows of the lower lash line. And if you look at the artist that does the Castlevania artwork, you will see what I'm talking about, because she has definitely been a very big influence on my art, and she has made that type of shading a special form of artwork, where your characters look mysterious and magical and just doll-like, like beautiful pieces of art and not just faces. Okay. Next up, we can use the gray part of this and just do the initial first shading of the whites of the eye. It's something you will see in every anime. It's not usually used in manga because manga is drawn very simplistically due to the need of quick printing and due to the fact that it's all black and white printing and less detail is preferred in the printing process. Okay. The shadow will follow the shape of the upper lash line in both of these examples. So, for the more serious eye, we'll be using a light blue and dark blue color. I will use the light blue first to color in the general iris and pupil. It seems we're having some bleeding here, which is something that's plaguing a lot of artists. Sometimes even the equipment you know is not bleeding can sometimes end up bleeding, and by bleeding I mean when in contact with water or with some kind of color. Some other tools like fine liners, or in this case my inking pen, will start smudging everywhere. It will start just moving and diluting itself. And yes, like I showed you in my previous video and like I showed you in my book manga crash course, you will be able to see the links down below if you're interested in purchasing your own book. We always leave this little highlighted part of the lighter color just in the bottom of the eye, so it looks more shimmery. And a very important part, I will be using 2 shades of warm gray here. A very important part of the eye shading is the triangle above the eye. This is a triangle shaped shading right between the eye and the eyebrow. It's a very subtle but very effective part of your character's face. And if you want to make it a little bit more intricate and a little bit dramatic and expressive, we will also give it some shading underneath the eye. This is the one I've been talking to you about, and this is when you use the shape of your lower lash lines and just copy them. Just make a lot of spiky, zigzaggy shapes and copy them under your eye. This will make an optical illusion of your character's eyebrows and eyelashes being so thick. Of course, we are avoiding this little part here between the eye and the lower lash line, thinner line, to make it look like a waterline. So it has a little bit of a 3D feel to it. And this way we get some sort of a even like spiderweb looking shape. But also it adds to the dramatic flair. And within this triangle we have another smaller triangle right here in this Y-shaped thing. This type of shading, if you didn't know, is called cell shading, where we don't particularly blend, but we use two different shades of the same color and then use the lighter shade for the general place of shading and then the darker shade in the part that's more of a depth and needs to be a little bit darker. So it's just clean cut between these two areas. Okay, so let's do the same thing for the innocent looking eye. I will be choosing the warm colors, the red colors, and since this eye is bigger, there is more space for me to play around with. So I will be covering the entire area. Everything except the highlights. The highlights should always be left white unless you want to like play around and maybe use some corresponding colors that influence each other nicely, like for a bubble gauze type of a drawing or something. But more of that in my later lessons about color and color theory and how to combine colors. So you should always make, well, if you want, if you're making more of a regular eyeball and more of a regular manga eye, the pupil is made darker by using a darker color. Of course you can play around and just add darker color everywhere except on the bottom. The bottom is reserved, as we previously shown, for the main bright area. I even made this particular pupil shape a little bit like double-edged, so it has a little bit more of a flare. We will definitely be upgrading this soon with adding the final touches with our whiteout tools. But before we go on to that part, I wanted to get back to the skin coloring, and let's repeat this type of shading onto the more innocent eye. So we are using the skin color or any color you want your skin to be. I'm using gray because it's just generic type of a neutral color to show you guys where the main areas for shading are located. So we have the main triangle right here, and we have the smaller one in here to just make the effect of cell shading. Of course, if your characters are wearing some sort of an eyeshadow or something like that, you will be prone to do more blending. But for now, I'm just showing you the regular shading areas. Of course, if your character is more masculine and they have thicker eyebrows, then the area beneath the eyebrows is a lot of darker colors, and of course if you have somebody with an exposed brow bone, you should definitely consider making this entire area darkened out. And of course you can do this trick here, but in a way more discreet and smaller measure. We can just do the same thing by shading this area here and transferring the shapes of the lower lash lines, and then adding some darker tones. If you have at least two different shades of the same color, then it's awesome. You can make a lot of different shades of the same color and combine it with a lot of different colors if you use, for example, watercolors. I have a lot of tutorials on watercolors as well, so at the end of this video, please check out my playlist on this subject. And the piece of resistance is definitely, I just smudge a little bit of the whiteout here. By using the whiteout tools like jelly roll or any type of white pencil, well, not pencil but pen, you can definitely add more effects to your eyes. You can elongate or multiply the highlights. You can fix errors. You can make doubled white edges of the iris, just like I'm doing in here. You can play around with so many things because you're drawing on top of a drawing with white paint. And this is something that's the last 5% of the artwork in general that can make your drawing way better, way more successful, and way more detailed. With whiteout, you can do all of the things I have previously stated and even add some dotted pieces right here on the edges of your artwork. And the thing I was mentioning before, sometimes artists can use white colors to edge out their existing lashes. So you can literally paint lashes, new ones, or emphasize the existing ones by using the white paint over dark areas. And this is something that's always going to make your drawings pop. You can fix some of the smaller lashes and make them even smaller, or make them pointier, smoother. It's so much fun to play around, and if your white jelly roll pen or any type of white pen is not enough, maybe it's a little bit transparent, or you can make good enough results with it, you can just grab your paintbrush and grab your any type of white paint. It could be acrylic paint, it can be school grade paint, and just do the job with that by adding some additional layers of paint, and cover your mistakes, cover some areas you want it to be pure white, and let it dry. So it's up to you to use this knowledge any way you like. Thank you guys so much for watching, and see you guys next time. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and if you want to learn how to draw manga, check out my book Manga Crash Course, available in English, French, Serbian and Chinese.